Here's a sign-up sheet. Those of you who haven't signed up. Okay. Everyone okay? We'll carry on, shall we? Let's go. So we're in Isaac's now. A little bit of Isaac material. Is there going to be much more about Abraham? No, not much more. Except his relations a bit with Isaac, but not much more. What have we learned about Abraham, really? Well, I mean, a lot of material, but actually, we've just learned some oaths, some promises, some origins, a few wife-sister stories, one story in relation to the angels and Sodom and Gomorrah, which relate to promises made to him and so on. But that was really about Lot anyway. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of information about Abraham, even though it looks like there is. And a lot of repetition as well. But that one story about Abraham and the campaign against the kings, that stands out as unique, different, very old. Not storytelling, more like a data document. That's a very old story. That to me is a lot of the rest here to me is like storytelling and fun, interesting, you know. But to me, that other piece is really something serious. This is very good writing too. I mean, I'm not putting this down. I think it's I mean, if you're a New Testament buff, you like the New Testament, I think this is as good or better in many ways than the New Testament writers. I mean, this is very good writing. I'm not putting it down. I'm not a fan of the New Testament stories particularly either. I don't like miracle stories and that kind of stuff. So I'm not a big fan of that kind of thing either. But this is really good literature. Okay. Now, there's another story here coming in here. First, we have the naming of the well, because we've mentioned Beersheba. So now, some relations with this, this Abimelech. Now, he was called the Philistine army in a previous story, but here he's not identified as a Philistine here. And as I told you, the Philistines hadn't come into the country yet, as far as we can tell. They came in with the Homeric invasions, the Trojan Wars, that period. They're descendants of that kind of upheaval in the Mediterranean around the 1300 BC, 1100 BC period. There was a lot of problems in the Mediterranean. And they came from the Greek areas. Mycenae, you can tell from the pottery and from the metal implements and things like that, archaeologically, might have been found. Now, Abimelech is a Hebrew name. Abi is my father. Melech is king. My father is king. The name means my father is king. Melech, king, Abi, my father. Av becomes Abi when you put a possessive next to it. Av is the singular, and then Abi is my father. You can say Avot is plural for father, or Abot. It could be Abot or Avot. Because B and B are interchangeable in Semitic language. Anyway, he meets this representative of Abimelech, and they're having some issue between them because of the border and tricking. No more trickery, says this representative. I guess that's just a continuation of the story about the wife, saying his wife's his sister. It looks like it's a continuation. I'll make a note of that. It's the first I've seen a continuation of wife story, I think. So they don't want any more trickery. So this is about trickery. So therefore they take an oath here at this well. What's the problem? I haven't read this recently. Who has read this recently? What's the problem that they're arguing about in this trick situation? Any of you know? Can you remember?
The well that the servants had seized.
Huh?
Apparently Abimelech's servants took one of Abraham's wells.
Okay, something about taking wells, and what about the sheep and cattle? No trickery going on there? Anyway, 7, you see, he takes 7 lambs as evidence that I dug this well. You know, wells are very important to Bedouin. So there it is. Sheva, you see, I told you, Beer-sheva means oath. The two of them swore an oath, but it also means 7 lambs. So then Abimelech went off. Oh, he does say the land of the Philistines there. So it is a continuation of that other material. Maybe there was more material that wasn't conserved, you see. You know, that other material back in, what was it, chapter was it?
There's a note at the bottom that says that it's a parallel of 26:15, and that has more.
Okay, well, we'll get to that, but this is a continuation like of chapter 20, isn't it, where they have the problem of the household. We'll get and see. Well, what chapter do they say there's a parallel?
26, verse 15.
Yeah, it's an Isaac story in the same place. Yeah, that's it. But we know the Isaac stories are being repeated in the Abraham's. Okay, and Isaac, by the way, there's almost nothing known about Isaac. He's just he's a genealogical interlude between Abraham and Jacob. I mean, all they know about Isaac basically is the same story about Abraham. About his wife, the well, and the wife saying it's his sister, and so on. Anyway, there's a tamarisk at Beersheba. Now, 22, famous story. God wanted to test Abraham. And this is another, I think, shrine story, because this is Moriah, Mount of Moriah. And the Mount of Moriah is ultimately what? The temple in Jerusalem. So this seems to be a story that having to do with why sacrifice either was initiated and human sacrifice ended, why we sacrifice on the temple in Jerusalem, even though he hasn't come into possession of Jerusalem yet. But the temple in Jerusalem was supposed to have been built on Mount Moriah. So, but now you who know Greek story, there's a Greek parallel to this story too. What's the Greek parallel to this story about the, if you know, the Trojan War? There's some tragedies written about the Greek general of the Trojan War, Agamemnon.
He sacrificed his daughter.
He wants to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. So that the Greeks are getting angry because they can't get moving and there's storms and stuff, and so he says he'll sacrifice his daughter, but he actually does sacrifice her in the Greek stories. Where'd you learn that? In a complete class? Or you just knew it?
I was learning it.
Oh, you were? Whereabouts? Here?
No, I know that she's at Vanguard University close to me.
Oh, well, see, that's good. You got educated. Yeah, I'm impressed. See, it's easy to impress people if you know a little bit of culture, because the average person knows nothing. So you can easily shoot past the average person when you get a bit of culture in you. And I don't know if you want to impress the average person, but it's always nice to impress people. So you're already 2 steps out of the game with some of these stories. So if you get the Greek stories under your belt, you're hit a home run, huh? What's your major now?
I'm in a master's in
English. So you took this class for fun? Or as part of your, you can use it for your requirements there? Because we give graduate credit for this class if you sign up on the 500 level for it. There are some people, yeah, you can get 500 credit for it if you make some arrangements with the department office. It's possible. Maybe it's too late, but you can always see. There's no secretary left in that religious studies office, so I can't, I don't know. They've lost their secretary. Okay, so God says he's going to test Abraham. He wants him to go and sacrifice his son Isaac, whom he loves, to see if he's faithful. This is a famous story too. Very tender story. It is, in fact, an Elohim story. It's about sacrifice, temple, place names. So, in fact, it's one of the better Elohim stories. But notice Yahweh is mentioned in it. 11, the angel of Yahweh called to the boy from heaven. Anyway, so they go up together, and the son keeps saying, the son doesn't know what's going on. Here's the wood, here's the fire, where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, oh, my son, don't worry, God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering. And then Abraham built the altar, bound his son Isaac, put him on the altar, and was about to kill him. And the angel of the Lord says, no, no, no. And Abraham, I am here. Do not raise your hand against the boy. And then he looked in the thicket, and there was a ram, and he took the ram in his place. Very tender story. The angel of Yahweh said to Abraham a second time, I swear by my own self, because you have done this, because you have not refused your son, only son, I will shower blessings. Your descendants will be, we've heard that, the stars of heaven and the great. I think it's another story, promises to Abraham at another shrine, this one, basically the temple shrine. Your descendants will gain possession of the gates of their enemies. All nations shall bless themselves by your descendants, etc., 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 etc. And Abraham went back to the ship. By the way, some Yahweh part of the story. Look at it. It keeps on, an angel of Yahweh keeps popping up. I'm not sure. This story sounds Yahweh to me, even though the narrator mentions God. So this, the Yahweh Elohim doesn't always hold up. It has weaknesses. It's not totally secure approach. Okay, so we get some information about his relatives here, line 20 to 24. Well, what's that? So, because he's going to send Isaac off to get a son from the relatives. So we get some information about Nahor and so on. And because he's going to send Isaac off to get a son, to get a wife from the relatives. And that, goes on even today. You saw people come from the Middle East, or come from Armenia, or come from Greece, or even Italy, or places, the Mediterranean and other places, India, maybe the Far East too, I don't know. They send back to the old country to get wives for their children, or husbands for their daughters. It's still a tradition when you go to another place to send back. And it's only when the children don't do that. Even in Mexico, if someone comes from Mexico, they send back. If people don't do that anymore, it means they've really become Americanized. And then the generations don't like that. They get angry at each other over those things. So this is a custom that's not just the Hebrews. So Sarah dies, 23. And this is in Kiryat Arba, or Hebron. If you look at the arguments in the Middle East and Israel, Palestine today, Hebron is a place south of Jerusalem where there's a lot of animosity. There are Jews who've gone back to Hebron because it's Abraham's city. There are Arabs who think they're descendants of Abraham, therefore it's a city that's important to them. They call it Al-Halil, the friend. Because Abraham is supposed to be a friend of God, even in the New Testament letter of James. And they fight over the shrine of Abraham, which is supposed to be the burial place of Abraham and some of his descendants in Hebron. And this is based on this here, you see. Sarah died, and Abraham's going to buy a place for this family tomb. He goes to the sons of Heth, H-E-T-H, line 4. And finally they sent him to Ephron. And the cave, line 9, is Machpelah. And that's still there today. The Jews and the Arabs fight over Machpelah. which is in the middle of Hebron. And I think it was there then too, when they wrote these stories, which is why they commemorate this place. So this is the story about how that place got started. I'll give you the land and you and the cave on it, and you can bury your dead there. So it's about the price he pays to Ephron. And Ephron's field of Machpelah opposite Mamre. You see that? It's against the shrine of Mamre 17. Another shrine, cave story. And he buried his wife Sarah in the cave. And it's called now to this day the Tomb of the Patriarchs. It became a burial plot for the sons of Heth, and that was put into Abraham's possession. Right? You got all that? Everyone see that? Okay, keep your finger in there, and I'll take you to the New Testament. And I will take you to the book of Acts, where Stephen and the Jews are having problems, and Stephen makes some unpleasant speeches against the Jews who are portrayed as persecuting him. And then Stephen says here, if I can find it quickly for you, in line lines chapter 7. He's going to talk about God, and Stephen speaks, my brothers, my fathers, 7:2. The glory of God appeared to our ancestor Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia before leaving Iran, and said, leave this land. And he starts quoting things from Scripture. And so finally, he gets down to line 14 here. Joseph in Egypt. He sent his father and Jacob and his whole family to Egypt. Tells the whole story here. And Jacob went, and after that, he came back to where the ancestors had died. And they were brought back to Shechem and buried in the tomb that Abraham had bought and paid for from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. Well, it's just a terrible mistake. And so, the person writing this, I mean, I'm sure Stephen never made any speech like this anyway, but he'd have been laughed right out of the Sanhedrin for that one. And the person writing this just hasn't read his history well. And so, it's when you see flaws like that, I know where he got this from, and I'll show you later where he got this from. He gets it from a Joshua story, like this gentleman was talking about Joshua, material at the end of the He gets it from a Joshua story or a material in the book of Joshua where it says, I think, Joshua makes a speech there, and that speech is basically this speech. He's pulled it out of there, and at the end of that speech it talks about the cave that Jacob bought from Shechem, Hamor, to bury Joseph in. And Joseph is buried there, not Abraham. But from reading Joshua's speech, he put Joshua's speech here into Acts. And then seeing that at the end, he got it all confused and thought that Abraham, anyway, it's just so crazy that I can't even begin to tell you. But I don't want anyone throwing stones at me, so I just tell you that there's flaws all over the place. And if you're a smart person, you can find them. It's all right. We'll make you swallow it next time. I didn't know grown people did bubble gum anymore. I thought that was just people up to about the age of 13. They're still older people do bubble gum still. Anyway, let's see. That's instead of smoking. I know nobody smokes anymore, so I have to do something else. So now, 24. So now you know, where did Abraham buy his burial site? In Hebron, field of Machpelah, near the oak of Mamre. And now you know more than the authors of the book of Acts know, okay? You're not going to make the same mistake that Stephen made. Now, I don't want to choose a wife from these people here. Abraham says his wife wife is dead. I don't want my son to marry the daughters of Canaanites. Take my son back to the old country. 24:1-9. So the master took his master's camels. I think this Yahweh mentioned, but it's mostly God, I think, here. Again, this God, Yahweh, I think, doesn't totally stand up here. I'm not sure if this is a Yahwist or an Elohist here, but I think it's Yahwist. In any case, he takes him back to Aram Naharaim. You see that, line 10, Aram Naharaim? Nahor's town. Funny, Nahor has the same letters as Naharaim. What does Naharaim mean in the Hebrew language? Nahar is river, Naharaim is two rivers. Mitzrah is Egypt, Mitzrayim is Egypt in Hebrew. It's the two Egypts. You know, there's two Egypts, one upper and one lower Egypt, up the Nile, down the Nile. This is the two rivers. Where are the two rivers? Aram is the Arameans, Armenians. Aram of the Naharaim, where I originally came from. So what happens? Where does he see the girl? A camel, by the way, in this story. And again, our experts would say that's an anachronism. I don't know if it is or not. Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, show kindness to me. There's a spring here. And he tells one of the girls to tilt her pitcher, drink so I and water your camels too. And I guess the God has told him that this is the one that will be the one if she says, if she gives him this sign. Everyone meets at the well, like the old drugstore in the old towns of America. Well, of course they meet at the well. That's where everyone goes to fill the water. So, I mean, that's where you're going to meet anyone. You're going to meet him. So he says to one of the girls, tilt your pitcher. And in any case, Rebecca comes out, line 15. She's the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. She had a pitcher on her shoulder. She was very beautiful. As usual, these are lovely girls. I don't know if this is Elohist or Yahwist, because he says in line 21, Yahweh made me my journey successful. So I'm not sure what story it is. Is it, blessed be Yahweh, God of my master Abraham? Looks like it's a Yahwist story. Anyway, after she fed his camels, 23, he put some gold bracelets on her arms, weighing 10 gold shekels. In any case, the girl ran to the house and told her father what happened, and this guy's name was Laban, L-A-B-A-N, line 30. And this is a pretty long story. But again, it's not about Isaac, it's about the servant. He tells them all about Abraham being rich, 35, and now he has this child, Isaac, and now he was told to come here. And he finds out that line 47 is a really long, wordy speech. We haven't had a speech this wordy in any of the stories, have we? So the servant gets the longest speech in the whole, I'm going to make a note of that. Servant gets longest speech in Genesis. Because I haven't ever seen a speech this long, have you? In any of the stories. They're always really quick. Anyway, now, will you grant our request? We want this young girl as a wife for our Isaac. And Laban and Bethuel talk, and they say this is from Yahweh, and they start to hesitate. Let me go back to my master, 55. Let the girl stay a few more days. And Yahweh is patient. Do not delay me. It's Yahweh who has made my journey successful. Let's see what the girl wants to do. So they call out the girl, they ask her, does she want to go? And she says she does. And that's the same way I think in the Rachel stories I recall. Anyway, these girls are very independent. They want to go. And there she gets this big blessing, 60. Sister of ours increased to tens and thousands. May your descendants gain possession of the gates of their enemy. Now look here, 62. Where's Isaac living? In the Negev, which is the northern Israeli desert on the border of Egypt, next to the Gaza Strip. And where is he living? At the well of 63, Lahaiwa. So again, you see how these Isaac and Ishmael stories get kind of intertwined? And the servant told Isaac the whole story. And Isaac took Rebekah into his tent and made her his wife that very night. And so Isaac was consoled for the loss of his brother. Hey, that was a long story for the Oaks. But it basically comes down to Isaac gets a wife and is consoled for the loss of his mother. And by the way, aside from Isaac at Gerar, which we already did, the next thing we're going to hear about is in Esau and Jacob, isn't it? And Isaac is going to be an old man. So what do we know about Isaac's life besides the Isaac at Gerar story, which we've already heard about Abraham? Almost nothing. Let's go back here now. In between this, we get a little genealogy thrown in, 25, 1 to 6. Abraham has another wife. Most people don't know that. Her name is Keturah. And now we get a whole bunch of sons. So by the way, that Ishmael against his brothers, maybe that relates to this, you see. All these other brothers by another wife. That could be. I'll just throw that out. And notice one of them is Midian. But that's funny. Later we're going to hear that Ishmael's descendants are Midian too. Sorry, maybe just the same name. In any case, these are considered here in this genealogy the sons of a wife called Keturah. I think if you count them up and you throw in, I think if you throw in Isaac and Ishmael, you'll end up with 12 again. But I'm not going to promise that. I don't have time to do it. But Abraham gave all his possessions to Isaac, and to the sons of his concubines he gave presents. And then he sent Isaac eastward away. And Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died. He was an old man, had a full span of years. And Isaac and Ishmael now, see, Ishmael's okay. He's back in the fold. He buried him in the cave at Machpelah. Now, just so everybody knows, that's for sure. Opposite Mamre. So he's there, Sarah's there. In the field of Ephron the Hittite. Now we hear that he was a Hittite. That Abraham bought from the sons of Heth. And Sarah was buried there. And Isaac lived at Lahaiwa, not Ishmael. I've been to that cave. I've been to that Machpelah. And there's it's really you have several rooms there, and in each room there are 2 huge cairns. I guess it's called cairns. They look like this. I don't know what they call them, but they're like this. They're huge things like this, side by side. The structure is a Herodian structure built in the period of Herod. It's Herodian architecture. So it was known in the time of Herod and the Herodian period in Palestine, time of the birth of Christ and so on. And so there's 2 cairns right next to each other, and each room has 2. So there's 3 rooms with 6 cairns. And I think they were. Honestly, I think that these stories are probably referring to these shrines. That they knew them back in David's time, for instance. I don't know who was buried there originally. Maybe it was Abraham. Anyway, the legend there, it's on these tombs with the signs that are there in Arabic and Hebrew. One is Abraham and Sarah. The other is Isaac and Rebekah, and the third is Jacob and Leah. Joseph isn't there and Rachel isn't there. Why? Because you'll see here that when Rachel dies, they have Rachel buried in a different place. She's buried near Bethlehem. And her shrine is there, and the Jews and Arabs fight over this one too. It's there, and there's a big tomb there in that shrine. It's a holy place. And Joseph, that's the story that Stephen is confused. It's Joseph that's buried in the tomb up in Shechem, because Joseph is the patronym of the northern kingdoms. And it's the shrine is what Jacob brought from Shechem. And he got it all mixed up in the speech. He thinks it's what Abraham bought for his tomb. That tomb is up in Shechem, and the Arabs and the Jews fought over that recently. I don't know if you saw the pictures about a year or two ago. They killed several of the Jews that were praying there, and then the Arab crowd swarmed over the place and started destroying it. I don't know if you saw they were on top of the roof with pickaxes, and it's a big affront in Israel today that the government didn't do anything to stop that. Let the crowd swarm over to try to destroy it. I don't know how far they got. I've been there recently, but I've seen all these places in more peaceful times. But they're there. So this is a real place. So now Ishmael's descendants. I don't know, did we have Ishmael's descendants before? I don't know. He married, she sent to Egypt supposedly, but I don't know the name of his wife, not mentioned here in this presentation. In that other story where it said Ishmael is going to be the father of many nations, in the first Ishmael story, did they name his descendants? No. Okay, so here's where his descendants are named. Now we're just tidying up the genealogies here. Let's see. So he lives 137 years, and he set himself to defy his brothers, line 18. Now that we did have earlier, didn't we? Didn't we have that in one of the previous stories? He set himself to defy his brothers. I think it's 16:11. I have it marked.
16:12.
16:12. Okay.
16:12.
You see there. Again, probably different lines. Okay. Now this is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Sounds like a priestly introduction. When Isaac was 40 years old, he married Rebekah. Yeah, that sounds that way. We've already heard about the marriage, and now we're getting it recapitulated in a priestly marriage. And he married her from Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram. Now we go back here, and it's Aram Naharaim in the Yahwist. So the Elohist is Padan Aram. And in the Yahwist, it's Aram Naharaim. 24:12 was Aram Naharaim. So these are different names for these areas. So we mark that. What's the? Let's see. That was 24:10. 10. And this is 25:20. 25:20. Padan Aram. It's important to know that because when we get to the Joseph story, we'll find that the Joseph story is stitched together in a very interesting way, and you can see the stitches on the basis sometimes of these names like Aram Naharaim and Padan Aram. And you see, Laban is called the Aramean, or Syrian, some people think that means. But Isaac prayed to Yahweh on behalf of his wife, and again, the usual story, she's barren. You see, all these women don't bear till Yahweh permits them to bear. That's because these were all chosen births. the storytellers want Yahweh to be involved in the birth. So all these births are difficult. The average people, they have easy births. Everyone's getting pregnant right, left, and center. But the chosen line, they have to wait till Yahweh opens up the womb. You'll see that, I don't say that's written anywhere, but that's clearly the implication that we're getting. So Isaac prays, Yahweh heard it. This is Yahweh's. Yahweh hears the prayers, and we get a little sort of poetic statement about what's going to be. Two child struggle in her womb. What do I need all this aggravation for? By the way, later on when Judah gets this prostitute that was his daughter-in-law pregnant, her name is Tamar, two child struggle in her womb. That seems like a variation of this story. And I think in the Judah story, the nurse puts a red string around the finger of the one child that came out first. Then he gets back in and the other child gets out first. And it doesn't follow up on that red thread thing. But here too they're having a problem with struggling in the womb here. And there is red. You see, like in the Judah Tamar story, instead of a red thread, Esau is red. You have that? I don't know if we can find. Let's just take a look at that Judah Tamar story if we can quickly. Let's see if we can find it.
Chapter 38.
38. Let's see. Okay. Okay. There's a story about Judah Tamar here. And line 29, she had twins, 28, 29. And a midwife caught the one and tied a scarlet thread to it. He was the first to arrive. And then the other got out first. Anyway, one was called Perez and the other Zerah. The one that came out with the scarlet thread, on line 30, he was called Zerah. But nothing happens. We don't have anything more. That storyline dies. We don't know, we don't know why they told us about it and what the conclusion is. So, just interesting. I'm not sure it's an accident or if it's well, give me that. It's chapter, what was that? I want to mark it in here.
38.
38, and what was the line there?
Verse 27 through 30.
27 to 30. Red string. I'm going to mark red string. Okay. So, okay, so Esau is red and hairy. You see that? That's famous, that he's red and hairy. That's going to be part of the whole story, that he's hairy. By the way, Isaac is really out the window here. He's just an old doddering fool by this time, I told him. Why do you think Esau is red and hairy here? Yeah, exactly. Edom. Esau is the father of the Edomites. Edom in Hebrew is red. But the capital of Edom, where they hang out across Jordan near the Red Sea, by the way, that's why the Red Sea is called red too, because of Edom. That's where we get the Red Sea from. The Red Sea, by the way, is blue can be. I've been on. But the mountains are red. That's why I think it's red. Because you know how you go into some of these desert areas, and you look in the distance and you see the mountains and they're red? Along the Red Sea, the mountains are red. And when they reflect in the sea, you see red in the sea. I think that's where the name Red Sea comes from, the mountains being red. And Edom, Esau's descendants, Edomites, they're red. And the name of the place they hang out is called Mount Seir. Mount Seir is where the Edomites are, S-E-I-R. You've probably heard of that. You'll see it again in the stories here. But Seir in Hebrew is hair. Seir in Hebrew is hair. So the reason Esau is red and hairy is his descendants are the Redites, and they're on the place called Mount Hair. That's why. That's why. He's not really red and hairy, I'm sure. But the storyteller likes these elements. They make good elements, don't they? Okay, so he's red and hairy, and then his brother was born. And you see, they're like the Perez and Zerah, they're fighting in the womb. He's grasping his brother's heel. And therefore, he's called Jacob. Something to do with, I don't know how that has to do with grabbing his brother's heel, but that's why he's called Jacob. In any case, Isaac was 60 years old. Esau became a good hunter. Now, in this story, God doesn't like the Cain and Abel story. It's often two brothers squabbling. God doesn't so much like the sacrifice of the meat. Who likes the sacrifice of the meat here? Isaac. Isaac likes Esau because he brings him fresh game, and then he can, he likes meat cooked on, fresh meat. He likes that. Esau's a skilled hunter. He's like who? Abel. Abel had flocks, but Esau's a hunter. And he brings back game. With Jacob, he was a quiet, stay-at-home guy. Hung around the tents. It says that here, doesn't it? But Isaac preferred Esau. Is it the case that the fathers sometimes prefer one son over another? Yeah, sometimes. And mothers too. And that's always in these stories here. I mean, the Hebrews are not shy, not trying to make these people perfect. And he liked wild game, liked hunted products. He's not into vegetables. Neither was God in the Cain and Abel story. So the Old Testament guy, these guys are, good meat cooking on the fire. That's a big deal. And here we get now the mom preferring the other boy. Does that happen in families? Yeah, it does. So the mom likes one son or daughter, and the father likes the other one, and sets up issues that continue throughout the whole life of that family. So anyway, one day Jacob is like Cain. He makes soup and stuff out of gruel. And Esau came back from the country. This sounds like a Yahweh story, doesn't it? It's really colorful like a Yahweh story. And Esau said to Jacob, "Give me some of your, the soup is red too. Look at this, the soup is red too. Give me some of your red soup, not beet." And that's why he was called Edom, you see, because he wanted red soup in this story too. Not that he was red in hair, but he wanted red soup. Because Edom means red. Jacob said, "Give me your birthright," whatever that means. And he says, "Hey, I'm famished. What's my birthright got mean to me?" So Jacob's a sneaky character, and Esau's a jerk. That's what it comes down to, right? He doesn't care anything. Well, I don't even know what this birthright is. First we've heard of it. But who would sell his birthright for a bowl of pottage? Very few people, lentil soup or something like that. And he just got up and left. And the narrator laconically says, line 34, that was all Esau cared for his birthright. So Jacob's, even though he's, and by the way, in almost all of these stories, the younger son supplants the older. Why does the younger son supplant the older? We want to get God's choice, and if it's just the older son getting everything, then that's just the normal way of most cultures. This way God is he gets into the thing. God opens the wombs, God takes the younger son over the older son. Because it's a preferred line. Okay, now there's famine in the land. Line 26. Oh, it's Isaac and Aurora. We've done that one, right? And then we also have the Philistines again in line 18. And the Philistines haven't come into the country yet. So all this is messed up. This is what you were saying, that there's overlap here in this well story, I think, huh? But somehow now, I'm not going to bother with this one, but he built an altar again here at Beersheba, line 25, and he invoked the name Yahweh. I mean, look, how many places has Abraham or Isaac invoked the name Yahweh? It's like each place there's a shrine. The story is that's where God's name was invoked. you could catalog them. You have more time than me. Yes, and they have an alliance. Line 33, the well is called Sheva because it's an oath, and hence the town of Beersheba to this day. 34, Esau was 40, and he married a woman called Judith, and she was a Hittite. The Hittite, that also seems to be an anachronism because we didn't really have Hittites in the country according to most historians yet. Hittites come from Central Asia Minor. In any case, that's how it's presented. And that was a bitter disappointment to Isaac and Rebekah. He married out. And like, you know, so many family problems. These marriages don't please the parents. Now, Jacob is going to get the blessing, chapter 27. And it's another one of those lovely stories about getting the birthright. The next one, chapter 28, by the way, is going to be how instead of Abraham sending his servant to get Isaac a son from the relatives, Isaac is going to send Jacob and tell him to go to the relatives and you know, not get a son, but get a wife from the relatives. Okay, but look, 27. Isaac had grown old. Isaac had grown old already? A minute ago, he was a young man. So Isaac, he's famous Isaac, but we don't get much information about him, do we? Who are the biggies? Well, there's quite a lot about Abraham, even though it's sketchy. There's going to be a lot about Jacob and Joseph. But Isaac and some of the others, not so much. So Isaac is old. This is a famous story. He summons Esau to him. Esau, here I am. Look, I'm old. I may die. Get your weapons. Get me something savory to eat. And then I'll give you a blessing. And this is weird. You don't bless people unless they bring you something. Is that what the message is? And Rebecca likes like Sarah, or like, pardon me, who was it was lurking around the tent when the angels, I guess it was Sarah, wasn't it? Like Sarah is lurking around, she hears. So Esau went out to the country. And Rebecca says, Jacob, come on now, we can't let this happen. I heard what your father said to your brother. Go to your flock, get some lambs. And we'll cook it up. And you'll get the blessing. But look, Esau's hairy and I'm smooth-skinned like 12. Again, lovely story. He'll see that I'm cheating him. Again, are any of these people perfect? I'm not one of them. They're all just very human, right? And I'll get a curse instead of a blessing. Don't worry, the curse will be on me, my son. Go and do as I say. 13. So he dresses her son like Esau and puts hair around his arms and neck from the skin so that he'll think he's hairy. Esau was pretty hairy. And he goes before his father's dim-sighted and old. Father, I'm here. Who are you, my son? Jacob said, I am Esau, your firstborn. Oh, this is like Little Red Riding Hood almost. Come here, come here. How quickly you found it. It was Yahweh, your God. Line 20, put it in front of me. The voice is Jacob's, but the arms are Esau. Again, a good picture of old men, doddering old men. Are you really my son Esau? Bring me the game. Come closer. I'll kiss you. And he smelled the smell of the clothes and he blessed him. Yes, the smell of my son is the smell of a fertile field. 27 and 28. May God give you a dew from heaven, riches. May nations serve you and peoples bow down before you. Be master of your brothers. Here we go again. Brothers. What brothers? There's only one that we know of. May the sons of your mother bow down before you. This sounds like Joseph. Jacob's favorite son. So this is really a Joseph blessing because it's his brothers. Remember Joseph has the dream? His brothers bow down before him? This really relates to a Joseph blessing. And Israel is the father of Joseph, and the north was called Israel, and Joseph is basically the father of the northern tribes. Principal northern tribes are Joseph tribes. Southern tribes are Judah tribes. Cursed be he who curses you, blessed be he who blesses you. This is a really exciting, it's a nice universe though. It's very appealing, I think. I'm sure you can see something too. Then poor Esau comes back. Father, 35, bless me too, I'm your firstborn son. Your brother came by fraud and took your blessing. That's why he's called Jacob. Now he supplanted me twice. Something to do with taking his place. First my birthright and now my blessing. Haven't you got anything from me, Father? Okay. I've given him everything. And then Isaac was silent, and then his father said, far from the riches of the earth shall be your dwelling place. Far from the dew falls from heaven. You shall live by the sword, and you shall serve your brother. But ultimately you will win your freedom and shake his yoke from your neck. So this is the war of the Edomites and the Israelites. That goes on for a long time. And under David, I think they have control of the Edomites. But later on, they get freed from them. And Esau hated Jacob because of this. And after his father dies, he's going to kill him, he says. This is like Cain and Abel. And Jacob is upset. Look, he says, your brother Esau is angry. He's going to take revenge, 43. You better go and stay with the relatives over in Iraq. And Rebekah said to Isaac, 46, I don't want him taking children from these daughters of Heth here. Let him go back to my family. So Isaac sends him back, and he's going back 28 to Padam Aram. And El Shaddai is to be with him, line 28:3. And Isaac sent Jacob away to Padam Aram, to Laban, the Aramean, and brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau, line 5. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Padam Aram. So he then went out and took a child from Ishmael's descendants. So Esau and Ishmael are interrelated. They're really the Arab tribes, in effect, in this area. The Arabs don't know anything about Esau, but Esau and Ishmael are to some extent interrelated. This is the Esau genealogy, line 9. So he goes back to Haran. On his way back, he passes another place where he sees, line 12, a ladder reaching up to heaven and angels going up down the ladder. This is a shrine story. What's this shrine again now? This is a shrine called, Bethel again. We already met Bethel when Abraham was coming down into the country, and he founded the shrine there at Bethel. And ultimately, Bethel is going to be the home of the Temple of the North. That's why it's called Beth, house, Beit El, house of God. So this is another story where the angels went up and down to heaven. And now Jacob gets a blessing here, and I think this is a shrine story of Bethel again. This is the house of God, line 17. And that's the gate of heaven. So he names the place Bethel, even though he's already had it named previously. In any event, also promises to pay a 10th part of all that he has. That's the tithe that even many Christian groups pay to this day to the shrine of Bethel. So he gets to here. I'll try to finish up, not too late today, but he gets to Haran 29. Where's the meeting? At the well. Where was the previous meeting of Rebekah and the servant? At the well. This time, where will Moses meet his wife? At the well. These guys all meet their wives at the well. Look who's coming. Does Nahor live here, line 6? Yes, look, here comes his daughter Rachel with sheep. comes along, and Jacob saw Rachel, and these guys, by the way, marry their first cousins, don't they? I mean, that's his first cousin. And, Middle Easterners still do this today quite a bit. Jews don't, but Middle Easterners do. And he watered the sheep of his uncle Laban. And he kissed Rachel, and she burst into tears. This is not something you normally do at the well. And she ran to tell his father. And they received him, and he stayed a month. And look, Laban says to Jacob, I'm going to pay you for the work you do here. I'm not going to let you work for nothing. And now Laban had two daughters, line 16, Leah and the younger Rachel. I don't know if this is the same storyline as the other or not. But look at how, again, this is Yahweh. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful. So the always just chick-chack tells you what the issue is. So they make an agreement. I'll work 7 years for Rachel. But what happened? The time flies by because he loves her so much, it's like a day. But what is Laban's tricky, isn't he? What's he do? He slips Leah into his bed. And but see, these are always sexual stories. But they're really charming sexual stories, aren't they? I mean, people are really attractive. And these men, as usual, they're not able to tell the difference between one woman and another, obviously. Once it gets down to sex, then I guess you women know how men are, so I'm not going to comment further on that. But anyway, it's a pretty dim view of man, sexual activity, I think. But anyway, he was quite angry at that, because when he wakes up in the morning, he sees he's got Leah. And so he says, what's this you've done? Line 25. I work for Rachel. You tricked me. It's not our custom to give the younger before the elder. Do the week of marriage, line 27, and I'll give you the other 2. And you'll have to work another 7 years. So we don't have monogamy here yet. And he did it. So he slept with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than that. And he worked another 7 years. Yahweh, anyway, here in 31, so it looks Yahweh. Yahweh saw that Leah was neglected, so he opened her womb to compensate her. And so she's the one who starts bearing children, not Rachel. And Rachel's barren. Again, the issue of barrenness and God opening the womb. And she gave, so we're going to get the birth of 12 children here. The 12 tribes of Israel. We've had quite a few other stories. And so we're going to get the names. What's the first one? Reuben. Ben means son in Hebrew. Reu means see. See, God gave me a son. Look, God gave me a son. Reuben. I have, see, there's a son. Next one. Simeon. Again, that Shema, hearing, like in Ishmael, but with a s instead of a sh, but still it's based on hearing. We always heard that I was neglected. Simeon. Third son. This time he's united to me. Levi means to be joined to. That's why the Levitical priesthood is considered to be joined to the temple. Again, she had a son. God has given glory. He always given glory. I guess something to do with glory in the name Judah. I don't understand that particular one. Rachel is not happy about this. So she gets her slave girl, line 33, Bilhah. And it's the same as the Sarah Hagar material. But these slave girls are not uppity. And Rachel's not angry at the slave girl. Or the servant girl, if you prefer. And so Bilhah conceives, and the son is reckoned to Rachel. So who does she give birth to? Dan. Dan means to judge. So you see, he's done me justice. Judge properly. And then she had another one. And this one has to do with God's fight with my sister. For some reason, Naphtali means that. Now Leah isn't having a good time bearing, so she gets her slave girl, Zilpah, and gives him to Jacob. And so another son comes. Something to do with good fortune. Gad, I don't know exactly the relationship there. And then she has another one. Asher means fullness. Here it says happiness. And now, here's the story about Reuben. Reuben goes out and is getting corn, and he finds some what are called, in my translation, mandrakes. Is that what your translation says, line 14? I don't know what they do, but I think they're supposed to be an aphrodisiac. To get him worked up for their mother, you see. And Rachel says, "Look, give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Laban said, "No, you've got my husband, now you want my son's mandrakes too? Okay, he can sleep with you, give me some mandrakes. Come, I've hired you at the price of my son's mandrakes." So who slept with who here? Jacob slept with Leah, okay. For some reason, Reuben's blamed here. I don't know what. In later blessing from Jacob to his sons. And I don't understand what the problem is. Anyway, because there was some payment involved, he's called Issachar, which has to do with doing business. And then a sixth one is born, and that's Zebulun. And I don't know what the reason for that is. And then finally a daughter is born, Dinah. And line 22, finally God remembers Rachel, took away his shame, and gave her another son, because Yosef means to add to, an additional son to add to, Yosef. Because God gave me another son. And at that point, who's not born yet? Benjamin isn't born yet, according to this. But at this point, Jacob wants to leave, right? That's the story from 25 to 48. And what does Laban say? He doesn't want him to go, right? Because they both increased a lot, and they don't know how to split up the herd. So Jacob says, "Okay, you don't have to pay me anything. I'm going to go through the flock." He's always KG 32. "I'm going to take out every black animal among the sheep and every speckled animal among the goats," 32. "That'll be my wages. And so you can check me out then." Okay, let's do it like that. So that night he took out the striped and speckled goats and the spotted and speckled she-goats. I can't even follow all this. And all the black sheep, and handed them over to his sons, and put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. I really, so in other words, I don't know, what's he done here anyway? He's done some trickery here, because he gets the animals to mate here in front of some branches that he had. This is an old wives' tale, how you get animals to breed in the right way. And they produce striped, spotted, and speckled young, 39. And for the sheep, he kept them apart. So in the end, anyway, there was some total of what he did was, because he was taking care of the animals, he got the ones that he wanted to multiply, and the ones his father-in-law to trail off. So that's pretty sneaky, right? And also the feeble animals he didn't breed either. Thus Laban got the feeble ones, Jacob the sturdy ones, and he became owners of large. So the Bible's not judging that this is bad behavior. I mean, we wouldn't think that was very good behavior, would we? So now Laban's sons are angry, 31. Jacob's taking everything. You better get out of here, Jacob, because my sons are getting angry. So they got everything together, Rachel and everything else. "Look, I worked like hell for your father," line 7. "Your father tricked me 10 times out of wages," and so on and so forth. So he goes on about this spotted and striped situation. You can read that better than me. And again, more about this spotted and about, I am the God of Bethel, line 13 and 14. So he has a vision of that God of Bethel, which is the northern kingdom's shrine, not Jerusalem. And Jacob, Israel, is going to be the father of the northern kingdom. In any event, when all is said and done, he takes off and even stole, line 19, the household idols, which seems to be something important to these people at that time. And he fled all the way to, almost to the river, I guess Euphrates or someplace, and was getting to Mount Gilead in Transjordan. And then Laban caught up with him. Why did you run away, line 27, in secret and stole everything and didn't even let me kiss my grandsons and things like that, and made me into a fool? And why did you steal my household gods? And he says, whoever is in possession of these gods shall not remain alive. I didn't take them. And Rachel, according to this story, took the household gods. Laban went through the whole tent. And but she's sitting on the gods, and she's in her period. Line 34, and he says, look at that, you can't look under where I am because I'm, in my period. So Laban didn't search there. And so she was saved, according to this story. So anyway, the upshot of all this is that they make a treaty. Line 48. There's another place named treaty area, story related to a location. This is called Mizpah in Gilead, which is across the Jordan where you'd go towards Syria, like they would drive there to get to Iraq today. And Yahweh is a watchman between us, because Laban is considered the father of the Syrians. 53, make the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, judge between us. And so Jacob swore, and they sacrificed there, and they named this place Mahanaim, which means God's camp. Or that was the next place, I guess, that they met some angels. And some more things about shrines and place names and so on. I'm getting tired here quickly. But fine, let's just do this. There's a lot here. Let's just do this meeting with Esau and go home. Once again, who's the nice guy? Esau is actually a nice fella. And Jacob is tricky all the time. So, in fact, the Jews aren't making their ancestors out to be some kind of marvelous people. And Jacob thinks that Esau is going to be really angry still years later. So he divides his group into two groups. And they cross the river Jordan in two companies, line 11 of chapter 32. So that if one group doesn't get through, the other group can get through. And he got some gifts ready to give to Esau if he could pacify him. And he gives them to the one group, says, give this to him if you meet him, and so on. In the meantime, before they do go over Jordan, Jacob is alone, and at this point, for some reason, line 26 of 32, he wrestles with an angel, and the angel touches him on the hip socket and dislocates it. And they're wrestling. This is like a Greek story about how the dawn is, let go of me, the day is breaking. He's stopping the dawn from rising, it looks like. You must bless me or I won't let you go. Okay, what's your name? Jacob. Okay, you shall no longer be called Jacob, you're going to be called Israel, because you have been strong against God, and you shall prevail against men. So it's portrayed that he wrestled with God there. And I'm going to name this place, another place name story. You see, Penuel, line 31. Because I saw God face to face, and Penuel means facing God. Or Pen is the face of God. So he names this place Penuel, or Peniel. And he limps because of the wrestling match he had. This is an incredible story. Totally not monotheistic, I don't think. But in any case, it gets into the tradition. Another place name story, this one, Peniel. And Jacob gets a name change, Israel. Well, I'll tell you, I don't think that's why he's called Israel. Because he wrestled with God. El is God. Isra means to rule. So actually, you could say Yisrael, God rules, the people where God is king. But for some reason, this story got into it that there's another version of the verb that has to do with wrestle against. And so they interpret the name to be the man who wrestled against God. I don't think that's what the name meant. I think that Israel means the people God rules. Yisrael means to rule. God is El, God rules, and I think that this storyteller is made up of some hocus pocus here, but that's what most people think because they take these stories very seriously. To sum up finally, he does meet Esau, and instead of being angry, line 4, Esau ran to meet him, took him in his arms, and wept. You see, that's the way brothers really are and should be. And Esau is shown to be magnanimous, good, decent, and Jacob's the one who's fearing for nothing. And they meet, and he says, "Look, what's the meaning of all this? To win your Lord's favor," line 9. He replied, "Look, brother, I don't need any favor. I have plenty. Keep what's yours. If I have found favor with you," Jacob says, "accept some gift." And finally Esau accepted, but you see, Esau is terribly generous. He just was angry when he's young. He's not angry anymore. And he greets him warmly and lovingly. Again, Esau's portrayed well, Ishmael's portrayed well. The Jews are not portraying outsiders any worse than themselves, but sometimes better. Okay, kiddos, that's good enough for this day.